Good evening. It's the appointed time of 5:30. I would like to call the July 12th, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting to order. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Will do, Alderman. Alderman Redpath.
Here.
Alderman Gregory.
Here.
Alderman Williams.
Here.
Alderman Fulgenzi.
Here.
Alderwoman Purchase.
Here.
Alderwoman DeCenso.
Present.
Alderman McMiniman. Here. Alderwoman Connolly.
Present.
Alderman Donlin.
Here.
Alderman Hanauer.
Here.
Madam Chair, a quorum is present.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I would first like to acknowledge the Capital Area Realtors Leadership Academy. If you will please stand up to be acknowledged. Oh, thank you. Thank you for joining us this evening. Okay, approval of the Tuesday, June 28th, 2022 committee meeting minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
And we have a treasurer's report. Madam Treasurer?
Thank you, Chair DeCenso. The corporate fund in the month of June had a beginning balance of $56,790,906. We took in total receipts of $49,807,536. We had total disbursements in the month of June of $31,226,903, which left the corporate fund in the month of June with an ending balance of $75,371,539. Chair DeCenso, this balance looks rather large because at the end of June, we received $14,083,886 in tax monies that actually went out to police and fire pension at the beginning of the month of July. And then the ARPA fund balance of that $75 million is $28,182,379 currently. So your corporate fund truly ended with a balance of $33,105,273. This concludes my report, Chair DeCenso.
Thank you. Any questions from anyone on that?
Motion to accept the treasurer's report as submitted.
Motion to, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we all had an OBM contract report. Are there any questions on that? No questions? Okay. We have no presentations this evening, so we're moving on to ordinances tabled or remaining in committee.
2021-337, 2022-256, 2022-272, 2022-285.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to consider agenda item 2022-272.
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we'll pull that out of committee. Let's start, anyone else? No? All right, let's start with CWLP.
All righty.
First one will be
272 first? Okay, let's do 272 first.
2022-272, an ordinance approving aldermanic districts pursuant to the 2020 National Decennial Census.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to amend 2022-272 to accept draft number 3.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second for draft number 3. Is there any discussion? No? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, so we're moving that to debate. Thank you. Moving on to CWLP.
Oh, we need to make
Oh,
a motion
amendment, sorry.
to move it to debate as amended.
Motion for debate as amended.
Second.
So move to debate as amended. And seconded.
And did you want Molly to address or explain
Molly, do you want to come up and address or explain anything?
Thank you very much, but in a moment of brevity, I'm just here to answer any questions. And if there are no questions, then we can proceed. And it's a legislative process, and it's all yours.
Thanks,
Molly. Thank you, Molly.
Madam Chair, if I can.
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to thank Molly and her staff, not only for presenting the first 2 drafts, but draft 3, but the level of professionalism and Your office does a phenomenal job, and we just appreciate being a part of it all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll be sure and pass that on to the staff that are really the data crunchers. And Jordan's here. He did a lot of the work, so.
Thank you,
kudos to
Jordan.
Alderman Williams.
Yes, so I think Alderman Donovan pretty much asked the question I was going to ask. It meets all the requirements and passes all the mustard to be legitly considered next week for final passage.
Ultimately, Mr. Zirkle will make that determination, but in my opinion, it does follow the parameters that all of you gave us back in later this spring when you asked us to do the mapping. I believe it meets the other criteria as well of the consent decree. Ultimately, it's Mr. Zirkle who can speak to that.
Are we asking him to?
It is-
Only if he wants.
Just very briefly, it is my impression from reviewing the materials last week that it is consistent with the consent decree. We will go ahead and put something, more formal together to provide to the council just by way of an opinion. But it meets all of the criteria, I think, that we had originally provided to the Planning Commission, the various categories of items and so on. And it's my understanding correct, it is published on the city website. It's always available to the public. So if there are persons that are interested, it's freely available for everyone to look at.
Yep, that is correct.
So, Madam Chair, I guess my only concern would have been with these amendments, 1 and 3 was the same for me, so it didn't matter. However, it did impact Ward 7 drastically. And I just want to know, back to my question from last week, was that alderman consulted or spoken with, or did he participate in this process?
If the question is directed to me, no, I was not consulted, and I did not know about the changes until 3 days ago, Friday,
Well, so
4 days ago.
So for me, because, I don't know how all the other council men feel. If it was my ward, I would have wanted to be a part of the process. We said we wasn't playing games last week, that this was a process. And so what I'm hearing, it may not have been a process. We used the word chatter last week. I'm one of these people that thinks something like this that's going to have an impact for the next 10 years should be open and transparent and done to where everybody can participate. And this is why I proposed that way on, even before we contracted with you, so that we would be clear to the public as well as each other about changes and things. To not contact him, in my opinion, is wrong. I feel everybody who's benefited from taking away from his ward or changing his ward should have had the responsibility to contact him and speak with him, as long as the time he's put in on this council and served. When I first looked at it, I thought, well, they did that because pretty much he can't run again. Nobody, but he still has to live in that ward, and those citizens are still important. And I just think, again, this council needs to start doing things in the open and speak up and say what's on your mind. I didn't like it either, but I had to take that chance of whatever you come back with. And I did, and I was reluctant, and I did. And now that you put all the work in and done it, then we, in my opinion, play games with it. But I'll just say, and my proof is, because he wasn't contacted, if this was on the legit and on the up and up, he would have been contacted for as long as he served and as long as he's been around on this council. We wouldn't have had a spokesperson. The people benefiting from the changes would have spoke up and talk with him and work that thing out. That's how you honestly do a map and be transparent. So, Joe, I'm sorry that happened to you and you felt that way. It sounds like next week this thing is going to pass, and 3 is going to be the map that we have to work with. But I just wish we as a council could do things better.
Well, Alderman Williams, I will tell you that communication works both ways. We all have each other's phone numbers. We are all open to communicate with each other, so that works both ways. Alderman Hanauer.
Thank you. I believe that Alderman Donnelly and I are the co-sponsors for this amendment, and I would at this time invite any other alderman that wish to be a co-sponsor to jump on board. So
Clerk, I would like to be a co-sponsor.
I would like to be added.
Okay. Noted.
Thank you.
Get them all,
Alderman
Frank?
Redpath.
I'm in. Okay.
That's you.
Alderman Gregory?
Number 4.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a question, Molly, and I think this may go to Mr. Griffin. Mr. Griffin, are we going to receive electronic copies of this so we can zoom in a little bit? That would
It's
be-
available on the city's website. If
Okay.
you could just go to the main page, there is a little thing that says the Ward 3 draft is under consideration, and you can zoom to your heart's content. It's a PDF file that we provided the city last week.
All right, I appreciate you.
You're quite welcome.
And my final comment is, last week we talked about, other people speaking or carrying the water and stuff, and I'm just saying, Alderman McMenamin, if you have an issue with it, speak up, let them know, and so if you want your changes, you want to fight for them, I will support it. But if you don't say nothing, we're gonna go through it with this map. I agree with you. Everybody want to be consulted and stuff, bro. Speak up, talk. If you want it, that's all I'm saying, and we all have to do that. We talk about that. Roy doing his thing today, and Jim Donlin did his thing yesterday. But we all grown, we all gonna have opinions. I had to learn it. I had to learn to leave it here and give our opinions, right? So let's give them, and let's move on with this map and make sure we produce something good for the people. So, I would like to hear what your
Alderman McMenamin?
changes is.
Thank you, Alderman Gregory, for asking me to speak. I don't have direct skin in the game from the point of view I'm not going to sit for re-election, but I do care about Ward 7. And I don't like Ward 7 being broken up like this. I think there's kind of a unity of community within Ward 7. It's a very special part of the city because of the high turnout, strong participation in community activities and civic activity. I think we typically have the 2 precincts with the highest voter turnout in the whole county. That's very significant. I'm going to save most of my comments for next week, but I will say this, that the Regional Planning Commission did an outstanding job. I wish you'd just done one option the first time through. We didn't ask you to do 2 options. It was kind of a bonus, but you could have, put less time into the project if you'd just given us one option. But that one option that was the realistic option was a very well-drafted option. I think it was better than what was done 10 years ago. And you didn't have any self-interest or skin in the game when you drafted that first realistic version for us. But then when council members get involved, they do have a self-interest. They have skin in the game. And so I think the voters would rather not see aldermen and alderwomen kind of tip the scales to create a more preferred map for themselves. I think incumbency already has massive advantages, and we don't need to add to that. So I'll speak more about that next week, but thanks for asking me to talk, Alderman Gregory.
I just wanted
And
to know,
Alderman Williams, thanks for speaking up.
Thank you.
Okay. See you next week.
Thank you, Molly.
Thanks, Molly.
Call the question.
Call the question. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor for the amendment. Is that correct?
You do in a second, Madam Chair.
As amended to debate.
As amended to debate. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, motion carries.
CWLP 2022-289, an ordinance amending ordinance number 101-03-22 by approving amendment number 1 to farm lease number 1055 with Dennis Goodbar for the Water Division for the Office of Public Utilities.
Move for debate.
Second.
We have a motion for debate and a second. Any discussion?
Yes.
Yes, Alderman Hanauer.
I got a notification from someone that it actually came up before the council a while back and about leasing land that is being leased. I haven't had a chance to talk to Doug, but I'm going to. I'm going to find out more about what's going on, but it just seems like people that have land out there, they don't get the first crack of the land next to them, and that I think that's wrong. And but I just wanted to bring it up because I did hear from a gentleman today, and we got to get to the bottom of it.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second for debate. All those in favor? Motion carries.
2022-290, an ordinance authorizing an extension to a professional services agreement with Christy J. McCurley for assistance and training with the Utilities T&D Division, and authorizing additional funding in an amount of $23,500 for said extension, for a total amount payable not to exceed $48,500 for the Office of Public Utilities.
Move for consent.
Second.
We have a motion for consent and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
2022-291, an ordinance authorizing the purchase of relays for Eastdale Substation from Schweitzer Engineering Laboratories, Incorporated, in an amount not to exceed $174,958.68 for the Office of Public
Move for
Utilities.
consent.
Second.
We have a motion for consent and a second. Any discussion?
That question, request to speak. Todd, is this what we talked about earlier today? Is Todd here? Okay, all right, never mind. I'll withdraw my question.
Okay. So motion for consent and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
2022-292, an ordinance approving payment to Constellation New Energy Gas Division, LLC, in an amount not to exceed $6,233,494.63 for the purchase of natural gas under an existing contract for the Office of Public
Move for
Utilities.
consent.
Second.
We have a motion for consent and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
And I'll be a present on that, clerk.
Noted. (2022)-293, an ordinance approving and authorizing execution of a lease agreement for lease number 1108 with Paul Marconi for a one-year term for the Office of Public
Move
Utilities.
for debate.
Second.
We have a motion for debate and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
2022-294, an ordinance approving a host site agreement with Linda Engineering North America LLC for CWLP Dahlman Unit 4 to be the host site for a large pilot testing of land-based advanced post-combustion CO2 capture technologies project for the Office of Public Utilities.
Move to consent.
Second.
We have a motion for consent and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
I'll be a present on that one as well.
Noted.
Motion carries.
2022-321, an ordinance authorizing execution of a contract with Fred Wanless LLC for purchase of land and all improvements located at Dirksen Parkway, PIN 14-24.0-454-003 in an amount of $360,000 and closing costs in the amount of $10,000 for a total amount not to exceed $370,000 for the Office of Public
Move for
Utilities.
debate.
Second.
We have a motion for debate and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
2022-322, an ordinance authorizing a supplemental appropriation in the amount of $1,128,130 from the city's corporate ARPA funds for the Water ARPA Fund, authorizing a transfer of funds of $128,130 from one account to another, and to authorize within the Water Fund and accept proposal number UW 23-09 with Pentair Flow Technologies doing business as Fairbanks Neuhaus for the purchase of South Fork pumps in an amount not to exceed $1,128,130 for the Office of Public Utilities.
Motion to
Consent.
discuss.
Motion to discuss?
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. So I guess I'll push the request to
I
speak.
got you. Go ahead.
All right. This is we need to replace those pumps. They're at least 50 years old. It's really important that we have pumps that can replenish our water supply. There's some aspects to this that I would like to talk with our mayor about and have further discussions with our Public Works Director and Water Division Director. And why? Because the question is, do we want to potentially increase the pumping capacity of these pumps that move water from the South Fork of the Sangamon River into Lake 2, excuse me, into our first lake? Getting ahead of myself here. As we know, the Kincaid Power Plant is going to shut down. And Lake Sancres was built exclusively for Kincaid Power Plant. And when the Kincaid Power Plant shuts down, there'll be more water in that Sancres Lake, and potentially that water can flow down the South Fork of the Sangamon River, and then we can pump it into our existing lake. We need to have consultations with the existing owners of the power plant in Kincaid and their rights to the Lake Sancres. That there's a lot here to be thought about and to think through. And I understand from Director Brown, Chief Utility Engineer, there's going to be something brought up next with the next set of ordinances having to do with our potential interest in Lake Sancres. So why do I think we should just think about this and hold this? It may be that these pumps have the same pumping capacity as the pumps of 50 years ago. And it may be that we want to think through the increasing the pumping capacity of these pumps to take advantage of the increased water flow coming down from Lake Sancres to fill up our lake. So that's it along. I haven't talked with the mayor about this yet, but I think we need to think it through. So this ordinance locks us into a pumping capacity roughly equivalent to our historical pumping capacity, and we may want to deviate from that. So.
Alderman Redpath?
Motion for debate.
Second.
This has been a motion for debate and a second is on the floor. Any other discussion?
Well, I'm sorry. I would just have I'm sorry, Alderman.
Alderwoman Conley?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, could we have someone from the utility come up just to kind of address some of those? Thank you, Director.
These pumps are existing pumps. They're 70 years old. They are, part of our plan to replace them. We have not had the funds in the water fund to do that, using ARPA funds to do so. The question of the Sancres Lake is really up. That's a separate issue in our minds as far as utility is concerned. Right. It would be part of the supplemental environmental impact statement when you're studying the alternatives for Hunter Lake. There's a lot of things up in the air that would go along with that. We don't know when that decision could be made. What's the longevity of the Kincaid power stations? That has not been determined yet. We suspected some of the environmental rules might require them to retire by 2028, possibly. That's still years out. These pumps are designed, to pump the flow that's basically available during, when there's water available in the South Fork. If we were to use the Sancres Lake, the way I would see it is that, that would occur during a really strong period of drought, where the bodies of water are diminished, your rivers are very, very minimal, if not dried up. I don't see us, basically releasing more water from the Sancres Lake through the South Fork all the way to those pumps, to these pumps that are up for discussion now. I would suspect that we would be installing different pumps at the Sancres Lake with a pipeline, essentially, to bring water right into the lake so we wouldn't lose water through evaporation. That all has to be studied. That could be years. We don't know. So that's, the utility's recommendation is to proceed with the replacement of these pumps as is, so that we were guaranteed to always keep our lake full as much as possible, as is currently designed. Todd, do I get anything to add? Make sure I didn't forget anything.
No, you didn't forget anything. I just add, from being out at the plant all those 20 years and whatnot, we've had several catastrophic failures of the existing pumping equipment. We don't use it all the time, when it rains in the middle of the summer like it has recently. Obviously, we're not using that equipment, but since I've been out there, we've had 2 motors that have went out on us that we We had to rewind, and we've had a catastrophic failure of the pump casing. So again, they're 7 years old. This is our only means of drought, I guess, remediation right now. And given the length of the permitting process and going through all that, I think it would be a mistake not to move forward with this purchase.
Okay, so how much have we spent in repairs to the existing motors over the last 7 years, do you know?
I don't have
You
that
can
number.
ballpark if you know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I don't have that
No,
number,
no.
but, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's not, I mean, these prices are on the move too with this pumping equipment. It's probably increased maybe 40% over the last year and a half.
Yeah, everything has.
So, I mean, it's crazy the way this industry's going with the pricing. And I would say too, that price there will probably not be valid in 2 months. If we hold this ordinance, we're probably gonna be looking at something much higher in price as a replacement cost.
And did you look at the cost of purchasing pumps that would be more powerful than the existing ones?
No, we
Difference?
didn't look at that specifically, just, I mean, for the reason that he mentioned with the SCIS and the permitting process. I mean, we've got the authority to move basically up to 70 million gallons of water a day over there in the South Fork, over to the Lake Springfield when it's available, to go back through that whole process and to try to re-rate that pump station and redesign everything that would be involved in that. I mean, we're not talking, $1 million project. We're talking a very large project at that point.
So you would have to get a new permit and everything?
Yeah.
If you were to delay this purchase?
Yes.
Thank you.
And again, we're just trying to do a stopgap here. This is our only means of drought control. Try to make sure that it's reliable for the immediate future.
Alderman Williams?
So will the new pumps be more powerful and bigger than the pumps that they're replacing?
No, these would be identical or as close to identical as we could spec, given the changes in technology. So we'd have the same capacity.
Because you're considering what's going on with Kincaid, something totally separate.
Right, that really didn't come up with this particular project. It is part of the overall study that Doug mentioned that will be up for discussion next week and the following weeks with the revised SCIS.
So in you guys' mind, that Sancris situation would have impact, the Sancris Lake itself? Since Kincaid is going now, and then you got Sancris sitting there. I mean, to get the water down to our lake. You don't feel you need a more powerful or larger pump?
No, not for this application, not for what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, but I'm not speaking only for this. I'm trying to just think.
Yeah, well, there's a number of approaches there, and Doug mentioned one of them. One of the approaches is just to install pumps at Lake Sancris and then just move that water directly into Lake Springfield. I mean, the alternatives, I mean, it's hard for me to really even speak intelligently on which direction we would take there.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Domlin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The good thing about going third or fourth is all of my questions have been answered, so I withdraw my request to speak. Thank you.
Alderman Hanauer?
Thank you. Well, I think that, we're being presumptuous that we would even be able to purchase Lake Sancris. Sorry. With what we've gone through, just trying to get a new lake and the amount of time it takes, to me, those lakes are awful valuable. I mean, if we had a lake, if we were a company, there's no way I'd sell it unless it'd be for a fortune. So I think that we can't just say that we're gonna automatically get that lake once Kincaid shuts down, because my understanding is, does the company own it, or does the Corps own it, or, I thought it was a Corps lake.
Thanks.
And if it is, that's federal, they're not gonna give it away.
Well, and it's not just the ownership too, but it's also getting the permits.
Well,
There's going to
right.
be a lot of steps. It's not going to be something that we're going to be able to do quickly.
And
It's
look,
gonna take time.
I'm as frustrated as anybody on trying to get stuff through the Corps of Engineers. you talk about a bureaucracy, that it's ridiculous. You know, I think they owe us a yes or no, and if they say no on Lake 2, then they got to come up, okay, what are we going to do that's cheaper? They've wasted a lot of taxpayers' money, and I think it's absolutely ridiculous and inexcusable, but I don't think we can just go forward and think that we're going to automatically have this lake to, you know, pump out of. I just don't, that's a long way down the road, so, and you know, that might be 3 or 4 councils down the road.
But it is something that they're going to, you know, and it's one of the options that are on the list that they have to look at.
Right. Thank you.
Alderwoman Conley?
Sorry, I forgot my question now. Oh, no, I'm sorry, not on this ordinance. I was just getting messages from constituents that the sound is not working for tonight's meeting.
Yeah, I've heard that none of the streams are working.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure people heard that, knew that.
Yes. Alderman McMenamin.
Yeah, so I think, separate and apart from whether we would ever gain rights to Lake Sancrest, and we just don't, we can speculate, but we haven't looked into it yet. We haven't had, I've been asking for a year now that our city have direct communications with the owners of Kincaid Power Plant and to review the ownership and the rights there at the lake. But separate and apart from that, even if we have no rights to, or never gain rights to Lake Sancrest, the way I understand it is, though, because Lake Sancrest was used as a cooling lake for heat coming out of Kincaid Power Plant, and now the Kincaid Power Plant doesn't exist, there'll be less water evaporated, less water diminished. So there's more water coming over the dam down the South Fork of the Sangamon River, which we can then pump. And I just think we should study this further and think about it. If we buy these two pumps now, they're going to be with us for 70 years. So we kind of forfeit a potential enhancement to putting water into our existing lake. I just think we should slow down and think this through, because you both have admitted that the two pumps that we're going to buy here were considered without forethought of the additional water coming down the South Fork of the Sangamon River. I think we should have some more long-term thinking about this before we lock into two pumps that are worth, I think, over $1 million that do no more pumping than our existing pumps can do, or roughly no more pumping. So I just think we should slow down and just think this through better.
Well, you got to think about, I guess, during a drought, when there is no water flow and there's more of a release down the Sancrest, or from the Sancrest, that doesn't necessarily going to be any more full necessarily, right? I mean, you can't just drain the reservoir completely all at once. So your flow rate isn't necessarily going to need to be increased from those pumps. You know, if we're pumping now when the South Fork is relatively full and our lake's dropping, trying to maintain, you know, the full pool level. So that way, if we hit a drought, we're still at full pool. So with that, I don't, you know, you're talking about, I think, a very, very large study, and that's got to be part of the SEIS. And, you know, we're talking at least another year, and you're talking to increase the size of pumps, if we have to build a bigger dam in the South Fork, those kinds of things. All that has to be considered. It's definitely going to be a larger dollar figure than what we're talking right now.
Well, to finish my train of thought, you know, a new lake is going to be $150 million. So to study whether we can get more pumping out of $1 million pumps is not an expensive study from what I can kind of figure. And I just don't think we've thought this through carefully enough, so my comments remain.
Alderman Donlin.
Yeah, just one question. Who owns Sancrest presently? Who actually owns the lake?
I'm pretty sure it's
DNR?
it's
I always assumed it was
Vista.
DNR, and it's not?
Vista is what we think.
Yeah.
So Vista has the ownership of the lake and the
Pretty sure, yeah.
water rights, so to speak?
Right. IDNR has all basically the grounds that are surrounding it.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Redpath.
You know, we sit here and talk about this stuff about potentials and what we think might happen, and we don't have the education or the expertise that these two guys that we pay a fortune to have. And I think it's important that we listen to our experts and purchase these pumps. We waste $1 million around here every week. So it's important for us to make sure we give those guys what they need to get us better, to keep our water supply as stable as we possibly can. So I encourage this council to listen to them and buy these pumps.
Call the question.
All right, so this is a motion for debate and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Public Works,
Clerk,
2022-295.
Excuse me, clerk. I'm a present on that one.
Oh, noted. Thank you. Public Works, 2022-295, an ordinance accepting the lowest responsible bid and authorizing the execution of contract number PW 23-04-28 with Petersburg Plumbing and Excavation, LLC, for the State Street Sanitary sewer replacement in an amount not to exceed $905,160 for the Office of Public Works.
Move for consent.
Second.
Motion for consent in a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
2022-296, an ordinance accepting the lowest responsible bid and authorizing the execution of a contract number PW 23-05-35 with Truman L. Flatt & Sons Incorporated for the FY 2023 Seal Coat Overlay Program in an amount not to exceed $422,369 for the Office of Public Works.
Move for consent.
Second.
We have a motion for consent and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
2022-297, an ordinance accepting the lowest responsible bid and authorizing the execution of contract number PW 23-04-29 with P.H. Broughton & Sons Incorporated to furnish construction of the Bruns Lane Overlay Project in an amount not to exceed $1,158,512 for the Office of Public
Move
Works.
for consent.
Consent.
We have a motion for consent and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
2022-298, an ordinance accepting the lowest bid and authorizing the execution of contract number PW 23-05-40 with Althofer Incorporated for the purchase of Weller's P385C asphalt paver in an amount not to exceed $265,304 for the Office of Public Works.
Move for consent.
Second.
We have a motion for consent and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
2022-299, an ordinance authorizing a supplemental appropriation in the amount of $2,443,000 from unappropriated fund balance to accommodate the Bruns Lane Overlay Project and various other FY23 road projects for the Office of Public Works.
Move for consent.
Second.
We have a motion for consent and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
2022-300, an ordinance authorizing additional relocation expenses for the businesses occupying parcel SR 0075 in the amount of $270,500 located at 1020 North 10th Street relating to the usable segment 6 of the Springfield Rail Improvement Project for the Office of Public Works.
Consent.
Second.
Motion for consent and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
2022-301, a resolution authorizing the execution of a letter of intent between the City of Springfield and State of Illinois for the resurfacing of 6th Street from Stanford Avenue to Myrtle Street, MFT Section Number 22-State-01-RS for the Office of Public Works.
Move for consent.
Second.
We have a motion for consent and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
2022-320, an ordinance authorizing execution of a contract with Star Moran LLC for purchase of land and all improvements located at Clear Lake Avenue, PIN 14-26.0-51-002, in an amount of $974,500 in closing costs and the amount of $10,000 for a total amount not to exceed $984,500 for the Office of Public Works.
Do we have a motion?
Motion for consent.
Second.
We have a motion for consent and a second. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Alderman Hanauer?
What is this for, and is this the new location for Public Works or the garage, or what is this for, Nate?
Yeah, so for the back agricultural area, we're planning on putting the future landscape facility. And then in the front portion, we are looking at transferring some of our operations to the front portion for our actual streets facility. As you know, our street garage is well past the end of its useful life. It's the roof has issues, and we have some various drainage issues, and so we're looking at converting that area and starting to utilize that. That will also, by purchasing this property, will allow us more operational efficiency. It will put the landscape facility right by our public works operations as well.
Well, and I don't want to get Evans irritated with this or anything, but this is just as a backup in case something would ever happen there. That's correct?
Yeah, that's for the future. I mean, it's going to take years to get the site ready.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion for consent and a second. Is there any discussion? Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
General city business,
Chair.
2020,
Yes.
If I could make a motion to have an omnibus vote on agenda items 2022-302 through 307.
Second.
So we have a motion for omnibus vote on 302 through 307. We have a motion and a second for consent, or for debate,
You for the debate agenda.
for debate. Is there any discussion?
Read them.
Yes, he needs to read the ordinances, please.
yes. 2022-302, an ordinance approving the reappointment of Stephen Treader to the Springfield Electrical Commission. 2022-303, an ordinance approving the reappointment of Cynthia J. Pethram, AIA, to the Springfield Electrical Commission. 2022-304, an ordinance approving the reappointment of Neil Hervey to the Springfield Electrical Commission. 2022-305, an ordinance approving the reappointment of Ryan Nation to the Springfield Electrical Commission. 2022-306, an ordinance approving the reappointment of Mark Vance to the Springfield Economic and Community Development Commission. 2022-307, an ordinance approving the appointment of Brian P. Sue to the Commission on International Visitors.
Move for debate.
Second.
These have been moved to debate and seconded. Is anyone here that would like to come up and introduce themselves?
Speaker.
We got two,
Mr. Sewell's back there as well.
three.
Good evening. My name is Ryan Nation. I've lived here my whole life. I've worked for Hanson Professional Services as an electrical engineer for 25 years. And I've been with the city council now probably close to 10 years, I think. So just appreciate helping the community. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Cynthia Pethram. I'm an architect here in Springfield with Farnsworth Group, Springfield office, formerly FWA Architects, for those of you who have been in Springfield a long time. It's been my honor and pleasure to serve on the Electrical Commission. I'm a member of the public. I have no special electrical knowledge. That's provided by Ryan and the other folks of the group. But I'm pleased for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Su. I have been living in Springfield for the last 29 years, and I have been an international business consultant for past 12 years, and so I travel around the world. I also co-own a new shop, Segment Watches, in downtown, and I receive a lot of international visitors lately who are traveling on Route 66. I would be very interested in becoming a member and promote the city of Springfield. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to move all these to debate. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
2022-308, an ordinance declaring real property as outlined on Exhibit A to be surplus property, directing all sale of said real property, and authorizing the publication of notice of said sale property and request for proposals.
Move for consent.
Second.
We have a motion for consent and a second. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Yes, Alderman Redpath.
So is there somebody here that can explain, we're talking about properties recently. We have 310 pieces of property that are setting out. And is this take in some of that, or can you explain that, please?
This acquisition is actually separate from the lots that we currently own. We looked last week, we actually have 272 lots. If we add these 110, we'll be at 382. We actually did buy them last year. It was approved through an ordinance. So it was for incentive areas, including the Far East TIF and enterprise zones, to provide for residential and commercial development opportunities.
And-
So
and-
it is separate.
And will these properties be put on the block for purchase? Is that how this is going to work?
That is the intention, to include them in the RFP process and take them on a case-by-case basis on the application process that we currently do.
If people have interest in properties that aren't listed at the time, can they come to you guys and talk about that? How's that work?
Yes, they can certainly inquire about any property that we own, but if it's not actively listed on the RFP, we really can't sell it unless we are going to put out an individual RFP for sale, which we do that. But typically, we see that when we're going to sell a property that has a structure on it.
Okay.
Are, some of these addresses are familiar to me. So are these going to be sold as is, property-wise?
You're talking about the ones that have the structures on them? I believe these were part of the railroad project, is that correct?
Oh, yes,
And they were
they are.
bought. Yes,
Yes.
I believe that is the intention, to sell them as is, where is, yes.
Okay.
Although, I just want to be clear here that purchasing really doesn't have anything to do with the acquisition of property, truly, but we do have oversight of the sale and obviously, the contractual bid process for those.
That's what I'm asking. For the people who buy these properties, they're going to be sold as is.
I do believe so.
Okay.
And it will be indicated in the conditions of the sale through the bid process.
I sure hope so.
Yeah, absolutely we will.
All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Alderman Gregory?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My only question, are we buying these lots, or are we just absorbing them? Somebody donating them?
These were purchased last year in
Right.
August.
Okay, so we already bought them.
And the council did approve the acquisition of those lots.
Okay.
So we, in fact, own them.
Okay.
This is merely to declare them as surplus to be able to sell them.
Thank you for the understanding. One last question. You said 382 is our lots. How many county lots do we take care of as well?
I believe it's about 200? 200. So it would be, we have 272 that are actively on the RFP for sale at this point. We'll be adding these 110. That'll put us at 380-ish. And then, yes, we do
Thank you.
maintain lots for the county as well.
Alderman Hanauer?
Thank you. I'm just wondering if there's a way that we could do an RFP that's ongoing to where we put all the lots on and it kind of doesn't expire until the next RFP's put out there, where we can amend it as we get lots. Obviously, if somebody would come to you and one of the lots is not in there, but we can sell it if they're interested at that time, to me, we need to get rid of it and start and get it back on the tax rolls, and then we don't have to worry about cutting it, keeping it up, looking trashy and all that. I don't know if that's a way, Amanda, I mean, you know the procurement process better than anyone around, so, that might be something I would suggest. But we've got to get rid of 300 lots is crazy. We got to get rid of them. We can't keep that up. It's like the old movie, The Blob. It's just swallowing us whole.
We do have an active RFP out right now. It is good for 2 years. It expires next year. We do have to review it every so often because obviously we do sell some, and so we have to go into CityWorks, update the lot, reproduce the list to keep it active and current. We've done some things to remedy that list, like add the wards and things of that nature to it. But there is an active RFP out, and these 110 lots that are surplus tonight will be reflected on that active RFP.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? So we have a motion on the floor for a consent and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
2022-309, an ordinance authorizing acceptance of proposal and execution of an agreement for sale of city-owned property consisting of one parcel for an amount of $34 for the Office of Budget and Management.
Move to consent.
Second.
We have a motion for consent and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
2022-310, an ordinance designating a non-smoking area around Lincoln Library.
Move for consent.
Second.
We have a motion for consent and a second. Is there any discussion? I just have a question. Isn't there a state law providing for 15 feet? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, thank you. It does provide for 15 feet. The way our plaza is actually set up, that 15 feet it allows basically just that windway. This would allow the
little further
entire
out.
plaza. I mean, it's the number one complaint we get constantly is people have to walk through a cloud of smoke. My child has asthma. We hear daily, so this is
Good idea.
just, we do have a law and we do have it smoking and we do keep the windway clear, but that's as much as we can do, the
Understood.
state law.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I might be able to address the question of the statute. You're exactly correct. The statute, however, does allow a city, a municipality, to adopt a further ordinance, which is what this is doing. I think attached to the ordinance are the sections out of the state law that allow the city to designate a non-smoking area. It is my understanding that basically the goal was to create the area directly adjacent to and directly around the library building. It still leaves open the green space and areas in front that would still be a smoking area. But this is to designate the area directly around, and the statute allows the city council to do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Conley?
Sorry, I hate to say this, Mr. Zirkle, you just confused me a little bit. Which
Sorry.
green space around the library are you talking about?
Around back. Yep, east side.
Around back?
Now, there is actually a drawing attached. I don't know if it's showing it in, doesn't show up very good in black and white, but color.
Okay.
It shows the area directly around the library
Okay.
exclusively. And then the more public areas, the green space and area in the front of the plaza is still open for
Okay, I
use
just
for
want to
that
make sure
purpose.
that, okay, thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Alderman Fulgenzi.
I was going to ask what the parameters were, but I think it's already been answered.
All right, any more discussion? We have a motion for consent and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
2022-311, an ordinance amending Chapter 36 of the 1988 City of Springfield Code of Ordinances as amended by amending Section 36.57A11 pertaining to the Juneteenth.
Motion for consent.
Second.
We have a motion for consent and a second. Is there any discussion on this ordinance? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
2022-312, an ordinance promoting public safety by restricting pedestrians at certain dangerous intersections.
Move for consent.
Second.
We have a motion for consent and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
2022-313, an ordinance authorizing the execution of a tentative project labor agreement for the 3 fire station locations with the Central Illinois Building and Construction Trades Council.
Move consent.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for consent. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
2022-314, an ordinance authorizing acceptance and execution grant number MC 21-033 from the State of Illinois Department of Natural Resources in the amount of $622,500 for funding for the Springfield Central Illinois African American History Museum expansion project and authorizing a supplemental appropriation in the amount of $622,500 for the Office of Planning and Economic Development.
Motion for consent.
Second.
We have a motion for consent and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Clerk, I'll be a present on that one.
Who also?
Noted. 2022-315, an ordinance authorizing a subrecipient agreement with the Illinois Route 66 Heritage Project Incorporated for the Illinois State Route 66 Experience from the Springfield Convention and Visitors Bureau using Dceo Route 66 grant funds in an amount not to exceed $875,000.
Motion for consent.
We have a motion for consent and a second. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Clerk, would you add me to this as a co-sponsor, sir?
Noted.
I'd like to be added too.
Noted.
So we have a motion for consent and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Clerk, I have to be present on this one and the next one because I serve on the statewide Route 66 Commission.
Noted. Thank you. 2022-316, an ordinance authorizing a recipient agreement with Route History Incorporated for the Route History Museum from the Springfield Convention and Visitors Bureau using Dceo Route 66 grant funds in an amount not to exceed $295,523.
Motion for consent.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for consent. Is there any discussion?
Yes, this, correction, Mr. Clerk, this is the one I wanted to be a co-sponsor on. The other ones, John, sorry. Apologize.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
2022-317, an ordinance authorizing the acceptance of RFP number HR 23-04 for an agreement with PSI Services LLC in an amount not to exceed $342,000 to furnish, develop, and administer promotional exams for the police and fire departments from July 5th, 2022 through December 31st, 2023 for the Office of Human Resources.
Move to consent.
Second.
We have a motion for consent and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we're moving into unfinished business. Does anyone have any unfinished business? Yes. Oh, wow. Alderwoman Purchase.
It
you've
was
got
it was a little
4 times you
slow.
hit that thing.
It was a little slow.
Was this
Thank
meeting
you.
too short for you?
I wanted to ask from Public Works, do we have a status on the Howard Johnson Hotel? I had received some phone calls and some videos of people still living in the back and pulling the green stickers off the door, and I saw it for myself on my way over here. So I just was wondering, how are we enforcing the condemning? I noticed the stickers all over the windows and the doors, but people are still living there and pulling stickers off of it.
Kneel down.
I'll just put it up. So, yeah, we went ahead and we placarded it, but we'll double check and take a look at it, and we'll work with the police department if people are trespassing in there. So,
They're living there.
all right.
Do we have any new business?
Yes.
Alderman Williams.
Yes, so, I don't know if Chief Scarlett or corporate counsel can answer this. So, on my ward map, I have a address of 306 South Wesley, but on the ward map, it's in a gray spot. One of the gray spots. There's like a light gray and a dark gray. This gentleman has called the police, chief, and he has a disabled daughter. And the little doom buggies, what do they call them? Come on, man. The little racers and, Chris,
Golf cart?
No, a little fancier than that.
Little,
ATV?
ATV type thing, yeah, okay,
Why are you looking
so,
at me? Because I'm a DNR?
yeah, and we used to
Oh,
have them.
yes.
Yeah, so the kids are racing up and down the old rail, where it used to be a railroad years ago. And this guy, I left you a message, because this guy is saying that he calls the county says, oh, it ain't us, and then Jeanette had told him, oh, it's not Alderman Williams, because it ain't that, and that the city police would not assist him. He's trying to get them to stop. It's the second neighbor. I got with the Sangamon County Board Representative Vera Small and asked her to look into it, but we have got to find out what police agency should be responding to him.
It is in the county.
So I could speak specifically to that matter. I did speak with someone else on that today as well.
Okay.
Apparently, so the address of the, on Wesley is in the county. That whole area is in the county. The issue where they're riding is an old rail yard that I believe is owned by the city, so that area.
Well, it's owned by him, that he's calling me saying they're going through my property too. He owns that as
So
well.
if it's on his property, that'd be a county matter, but it was my understanding from the individual I talked to, there was an issue on an old rail yard.
Well, I'm sorry, I take that back. It's both. So they do the old rail yard through his property as well, and it's waking up his disabled daughter. And so he says that he put cameras up. Now he's got them on camera destroying his camera and all these different things. And I'm just trying to get him to the right law enforcement agency.
We will talk with him.
Okay.
And I
I'll
told
get
the-
you his
yes, sir.
information.
I told the gentleman that I'd have a representative reach out, and we'll sort it out.
I appreciate it because I couldn't believe for the first time I kind of felt like, well, where does he go? You know, it's just one of those areas of Ward 3 that, you know, they burn, they do all kinds of things that we can't do, you know, and
Wanna do.
it's just dead in the middle.
I'll get with you and we'll.
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Alderman McMenamin.
City Corporation Council, there's something I'd like you to look into. So downtown, there's outside the cannabis dispensary, there's frequently individuals laying flat on the sidewalk. Sometimes they're completely flat, sometimes they're propped up against a building. Could you review our city ordinances to determine whether that's a acceptable activity? I've noticed individuals walking from our two hotels, our downtown hotels, oftentimes walk by that and they're kind of, I think, upset by it. And I'm surprised that, I hope there's something in our city code that allows us to prevent that type of activity downtown.
I saw it Saturday morning. Any other new business? Okay, we have one citizen signed up to address the committee. Is that correct, clerk?
That is correct. Laquem Hakim.
Good evening, Alderwomen, Alderman. I have one question. There's an ordinance for grass, the height, what is it, 4 inches? 6 inches? For the public to cut their grass? For homeowners? Is that what it is?
Public Works would need to be specific about that. Do you have it, Nate?
I think it's 11.
Okay.
10. 10 inches.
Then there's a double standard issue. If the homeowners is only allowed to have 10 inches of high grass, then why is the city allowed to grow 8 to 12 to 14 feet high? Last year, when I bought my property on North 3rd, I had to get somebody to come in because the city saying, oh, it belongs to the county. County says, no, it belongs to the city. Nobody took responsibility. So I had to hire somebody to come in and cut the city's and the county's property, which cost me a lot of money. This year, I'm coming to you directly, because when you come off of Sangamon, there's a waterway, the ditch. North and south is city property. East and west is county. Then it goes back north and south behind my property. The grass is over 8 to 12 feet tall. I don't want to have to spend out several $1,000s like I did last year. It needs to be cut, because that's where them snakes that I showed you, some black king snakes, aggressive ones, is staying.
Mr. Hakim, have you worked with your alderwoman and Public Works on this?
I've talked to them. Now, I think Ms. Purchase is the alderwoman over there. Okay, at that time, she wasn't alderwoman. It was
Mr. Proctor.
Mr. Proctor. And I have spoke to him prior to this. And he said he was going to try to get it taken care of, but he got...
She's new and she's here now, and she will help you with this,
Okay.
as will Public Works.
May I speak to you after
Yes, but I also want you to talk to Director Harris to give him the address for that area.
I believe he knows the address, because he's been out there a few times.
Okay.
Well, why don't you tell it to him again, just to make sure, okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very helpful, Alderman
Well,
Redpath.
you know, sometimes you gotta use a little.
Very
common
helpful, thank you. Is there anything else? Do we have an executive session?
No, ma'am.
All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned.
Good job, Madam Chair.
Check with them.
Who?